Real Estate, Money, and More, Episode 10.
You finally found it! Welcome to the show that helps thousands with real estate, money, and a whole lot more. Now here is our host, best-selling author, Shane Willis.
Well, hello, welcome to the podcast that talks about exactly what the title says. We're going to talk about real estate, we're going to talk about money, and we're going to talk about a whole lot more. I'm your host, Shane Willis. Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. I really appreciate you coming back and listening. So this week we're going to discuss some misconceptions that buyers have about the ability to buy a property. I was actually asked to come down and give a speech at the summit down in Orlando this past December. So I went down there and it kind of dawned on me that there were a lot of misconceptions in a lot of different businesses, but I thought about ours specifically and how buyers today believe that they have to wait a lot longer to buy a home. So here in a minute, I'm actually going to transition. I got a copy of that speech, transition over and let you listen to the speech, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Did want to cover a few things that have been happening lately. We are here at the end of February, so Mardi Gras has wrapped up here in the Pensacola area, and boy, was it a blast. If you have never attended Mardi Gras here along the Gulf Coast, put that on your bucket list. It's not just a New Orleans thing, although New Orleans has a lot of fun. Mardi Gras actually started in Mobile, Alabama. And then Pensacola would be one of the second places, and then New Orleans has kind of just taken it over and blown it way big and actually commercialized a lot of it. But the whole area here during Mardi Gras is an absolute blast. So if you ever get a chance to come down here and play with us during this time of year, you definitely want to. It's the whole city kind of shuts down, and we have a good time. I also wanted to cover that last episode. I told you that we actually had two books out. We had the book Transform out, and we had the book that was talked about in the last episode, The Business of Selling Your Property. I've been getting a lot of requests on how I can get a copy of those books. Both those books are available on Amazon, or you can buy them from the site. I actually recorded The Business of Selling Your Property, and if you just Google search that, I think the name of the website is thebusinessofsellingyourproperty.com. Is a site for the book. You actually can either get just the chapters if you want to hear exactly what I said in the chapter, or you can download the whole book as an audio. Since I know this is a podcast audience, I made sure that I recorded all of it, and it's available on that site. I'll put a link to the audio download in the show notes here. But let's get started on this week's episode. Again, I want to talk about misconceptions that buyers have and buying their property. I'm going to take you now to a speech that I did in Orlando at the summit, which was a sales speech, a sales conference. There was a bunch of salespeople and a bunch of business people had asked me to come talk. And so I brought up some kind of misconceptions that I'm seeing buyers have, and it kind of was for them to find misconceptions in their business. But I want you to listen to some of the misconceptions here, and we'll come back and talk about it. Let's transition over there now.
So the other day I was at a barbecue with my wife. We were having some friends over, and a guy just out of the blue said, well, you know, Shane, in about 5 years I want you to help me out to buy a house. And of course, my immediate, because I can't turn this off, why 5 years? Well, you know, 2 years ago I just had a foreclosure. Oh, okay. And it stays on your credit report for 7 years, so I can't buy a house for another 5 years. That's not the case. One of the reasons I bring up this story is I want you to find misconceptions in your business. And this is one. People think because they had a foreclosure or they had a short sale on their credit, and because it stays on there for 7 years, you can't afford to buy a house. The bankers won't let you. Now, a lot of people are shocked when they find out that I have personally had a foreclosure. I've personally had a short sale. If you know anything about me, you know that I owned a mortgage company when mortgages died. Meaning in 2007, my main income was from mortgages. It died. I couldn't afford the house I was living in, so I had a foreclosure. Just a couple of years ago, I bought another house. It takes time. It's not instantaneous, but it's darn sure not 7 years. So in your business, find a misconception, expose it, and I guarantee you'll find some hidden potential and probably some hidden sales. So I explained it to him, and I told him we've helped hundreds of people work through this, that he doesn't have to wait 5 years, and we decided we'd catch up for breakfast the next morning and talk about the program. So I took another sip of my drink, and it wasn't water at the time. And Christy asked me how the market is. So Shane, how's the market? Let me explain. When you ask a seasoned professional how the market is, that's like asking a chef how food is. You can't just say, how's food? That makes no sense. So I said, I don't know. And of course, that always gives a bunch of people a look. What? You don't know? You're the professional. I don't know. Are you buying? Are you selling? Are you leasing? Is it commercial? Is it residential? What is it? How's food? Oh, well, yeah, no, I'm buying and it's residential. Great. So now we've narrowed it down to how's edible food. I haven't got to the point where I need to get you to yet. And I'll kind of give you the example. A lot of times I tell my clients I have different sets of glasses that I wear for the different buyers. The first buyer, Christy, who had asked the question, she was the one that said, how's the market? I knew what she meant. She was looking for a home. She wanted a place to live. That's one set of sunglasses. Now, how am I looking at their house? Well, I'm going to look at, is the kitchen big enough for her? Is it to her personal likings? Does it have a man cave? Because I know her husband wants a man cave. It better have 4 bedrooms because they have 3 kids. That's a different set of sunglasses. We were looking at the aesthetics of the property and is it going to fit their needs personally? Now let's take those off because Quint was in the circle and Quint and I have done a couple of deals together and that was an investor set of glasses. Now an investor set of glasses actually has 2 aspects to it. One could be for cash flow, which is investing truly in real estate. Meaning, I buy a property, it rents out for enough to cover the cash every month. So my outgo is covered, and I put money in my pocket every month. That's investing for cash flow. We've all heard of the other one, which is called trading. We've seen the shows, flip this house, flip this Camaro, whatever we're flipping. That's to find a product, put some money in it, sell it for a profit. That's a trade. That's a real estate trade. That's not really investing. And I'm going to kind of shock you here a little bit because every time I talk about investing, people go, well, what about appreciation? Appreciation in real estate is a bonus. Wait, what? Yeah, appreciation in real estate is a bonus. If you invest in real estate for the cash flow only and you get some appreciation, great. But what happened in the crash? Everybody was investing for appreciation only. I don't care if I lose $200 a month and they wound up losing the house because it depreciated. So that's the investor sunglasses that I have. You know, there's a third, believe it or not, and it's kind of a hybrid. It's what we call the vacation buyers. These are the folks that have a little bit of money. They want a vacation home, but they want tenants to rent it out when they're not using it to pay for it. Now let me caution, remember appreciation is a bonus. So if you're an investor as a vacation buyer, it's a bonus. Don't just do it for appreciation only. Does that make sense? So that's a different set of sunglasses though, because I'm not looking at it the cash flow only, and I'm not looking over here where is the tub big enough? I've kind of got one lens on each, and it depends on the marriage, which one's a little stronger, if that makes sense. So what I'm trying to get to for you guys is you need to find out details more about what your client's looking for. How's the market? How's food? It's obviously pretty good for me, but we need to talk a little bit more about detail. Find the sunglasses. Now, if anybody wants to talk about real estate, I'll be in the back of the room. I've got all the sunglasses. I own Ray-Bans left and right because I know what we're looking for. But I want you to go away from today thinking about what type of sunglasses can I come up with to better help my client. Thank y'all for having me.
And now, first of all, I wanted to thank the guys down at the summit for inviting me down to speak. That was a great, great conference. I heard some other speakers that were phenomenal and heard a lot of great ideas. Hopefully they will invite me back for another round. But let's talk about what I was saying in that speech. First of all, there's a misconception that if you've had a foreclosure or a short sale, you have to wait 7 years before you can get another mortgage. That's a misconception that is costing a lot of people to continue to rent when they could buy. I said it in the speech. A lot of people were surprised that I've actually had both myself. I've personally had a foreclosure. I've personally had a short sale that I've had to deal with. So I understand what happens, and it is not overnight, like I had said in the speech. One of the things that I tell a lot of my clients to do is that you have to just start rebuilding credit. When your bankers right now, and in the lending world that we're in, here it is February 2015, they look and see a foreclosure or a short sale, congratulations, you're about half of America. So it's not the immediate downfall of everything at that point. It's just that, okay, now we did have a foreclosure, we did have a short sale. What are the criteria? Well, let's talk about how far you are away from that short sale. Are you at least a year? Or 2 years is even better. 4 years is the best. But there's lenders out there that'll lend a year out of foreclosure. What are they looking at when they make the decision to lend a year or even 4 years out of foreclosure? They're looking at what you did after the foreclosure, meaning what was reported after the foreclosure that shows you are now credit worthy. And then they may ask for a letter of explanation. You'll hear loan officers all the time say, I need an LOX. It's a letter of explanation of what happened. Why did it foreclose? My letter was very simple. I owned a mortgage company at the time. That's really all I had to say. I owned a mortgage company in 2008, and it cost me my house because the economy went, well, we're going to keep this G-rated, down the tubes. But then they looked at my credit since then. And there's looking at trade lines that they want to see good, solid payments since then. Now, if you've got enough trade lines that you can pay on, and when I say trade lines, I mean car loans, credit cards. If you've got enough that you can pay on consistently, that you don't need to rebuild, fantastic. Just keep your payments current on everything. Student loans, everything, towards or after the foreclosure or short sale. That will slowly rebuild your credit back up. I had lost a lot, and a lot of accounts got closed out because of the fail of the business, the mortgage business, because of the economy. So I had to actually start over again, rebuilding credit. And what I did was a simple little trick. I actually had $1,000 that I took to 3 different banks. The same $1,000. So I walked into the bank with $1,000 and I bought a $1,000 CD. I immediately turned around and got a loan for $1,000 secured by that CD. So it was a 12-month CD and it was a loan secured by the CD. Then I left. I did that 3 times. So now I have 3 banks all lending me $1,000. Of course, they don't have any problems lending me $1,000 because they really have the $1,000 in the bank there with the CD. So then I came back to each one of the 3 banks and I found out the payments. The payments were about $15 or $13 a month or something. It was really, really cheap. But what I did was I took 14 months worth of payments, not just a year because I didn't want to zero out the account, but I would open an account and put at least 14 months worth of payments for that new loan aside. So, basically $200. And I would put $200 in each one of the 3 banks, which means I still came back home out of the $1,000 with $400 in my pocket. I've got 3 banks that have $200 in each one of them, but each one of the banks are set up on automatic payment. And I didn't even think about it again. I put a reminder in my phone and on my day timer to check in about the 11th month. So this is a way to just rebuild credit on autopilot. Now, after about 6 months, I actually went and got another credit card because I didn't want just secured loans. I also wanted revolving credit, which is something that helps your credit report. So I did get a credit card and started spending some money on it, but I made sure that I paid all the way down to about 25% of the maximum. So meaning if you have $1,000 credit limit, you don't want to owe it at the end of the month any more than about $250. And so I would pay that off and put that on auto payment too. And again, that auto payment's not more than about $10 or $15 a month. So it's not that we're spending a whole lot of money every month, but we are having to spend a little bit of money. Now that took a year. After the year, all three banks asked me what I wanted to do. Well, the situation I was in at the time, selling real estate and with some of the other investments I had working, I decided it really wasn't time for me to buy a home yet. It wasn't there because I was doing a lot of traveling. We were still deciding if we were going to stay here in the Pensacola area or not. So I renewed it. I renewed the CD. I renewed all the loans. I renewed all the checking accounts so that they could have auto payments, and just kept them on auto payment again. So now we're 2 years in. I'm 2 years worth of perfect payments with 3 different banks plus a credit card. The credit reporters love me. Now I'm 2 years away from a foreclosure, but when a lender looked at my credit score and actually looked at my report, they saw perfect payment for the last 2 years. Then they got a copy of my rent bill. I was renting from a company, so I was able to get a printout from that company very easily. And they saw that I had paid my rent on time every month, no questions asked. Now that's kind of important to make sure that you understand rent as well, because there's a criteria that lenders use when they look at lending someone a new mortgage that hadn't had a mortgage in a while or has never had a mortgage. And that is, they want to make sure you can afford the payment. So not only are we going to look at your income, and we're going to get a certain debt ratio, which we discussed in an earlier episode about how to calculate your debt ratio. That was episode 4, where we talked about getting a home loan. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. But we calculate your debt ratio. But one of the things that helps justify that you can afford the mortgage is if you're paying close in rent, and have paid for like the last 2 years, to what your new mortgage payment's going to be. In my instance, my actual mortgage payment went up $115 more than I was paying in rent for the last 2 years. So now let's think about this when you're a mortgage underwriter. The person did have a foreclosure. The person did have a short sale. But since that time, they have 3 bank loans that have paid on time every single month. They've had a credit card that's paid on time every single month. And their rent payment has been perfect for the last 2 years. And now I'm looking at their rent payment and their proposed new mortgage payment, and the new mortgage payment's only $115 more than they've been able to pay rent perfectly for the last 2 years. Now let me caution you as far as proving rent payments. If you're renting from an individual and not a company, pay with checks and get canceled checks. Excuse me, let me say that again. If you're renting from an individual and not a company, pay with checks and get canceled checks. The days of just going to a landlord and asking for a letter of perfect payment are over. There are a lot of landlords back in the heyday that wanted to kick the renter out that would sign a letter saying, yeah, they paid perfectly. The loan industry would give them a loan to buy a house, and yeah, well, they didn't pay perfectly. So today's lending world is going to make you prove anything you say. They will take a company letter saying that you've paid on time, but if we're from an individual, you want to make sure you're protected and get a check, get the canceled check, keep a copy of it so that you can prove to the new loan officer that you're getting or that you're paying your rent on time every single month. So to end the story, I actually had done all that, and within 2 years, I was able to get a VA loan. I was able to use my veterans benefits and go back and get a VA loan. Now, before you start thinking that a VA loan is easier to get because I was a veteran, let me correct you now. A VA loan is actually harder to get because it's government backed. you still have to qualify for the loan. One of the qualifications is to be a veteran with an honorable discharge. That's just one of the qualifications. You still have to have the credit criteria. They still have pretty strict guidelines for not only you, but for the property. The property that you're buying has to meet a certain criteria, and you have to meet a certain credit criteria. So it's not that because I'm a veteran, I automatically qualify. That's not the case with VA loans. We're going to do an episode here, and I'm thinking 2 or 3 episodes from now, we're actually talking with a lender about VA loans, how they work, and how if you're a veteran, they're a great thing. And if you're a seller, understanding VA loans helps out quite a bit as well, because now you know what they're looking for, or at least partially what they're looking for in part of the process. There's some nuances there. But this episode's talking about your credit. So that misconception of having a foreclosure or having a short sale on your credit report says you cannot buy a house is false. It is a misconception. I guess that would be a double negative since I said the misconception is a false. I'm not an English professor. I don't know. So it is a misconception. If you have a short sale or a foreclosure, as long as you're a year out and you've got good payments and your score has come up to a certain level, then you may be able to qualify with certain guidelines. Now, the further you are away from that foreclosure and short sale, the better your chances are. It also opens up different lenders, because some lenders will not let you qualify. They put what they call layers over the requirements that either the government puts down or whatever type loan you're getting. They put a layer of, we want you at least 4 years away from the foreclosure, so they don't open up until 4 years. The other misconception I talked about was buying a property and looking at it the same regardless of whether I was buying it as a home or buying it as an investment property. I'm really not going to cover that in this particular episode. I really wanted to touch mainly on the credit and how, just like half of America, that a foreclosure and a short sale is not prohibitive in and of itself from you getting a mortgage today. But you do have to take some proactive measures to work on your credit to prove to the underwriters that you're credit worthy again now, and that it was just an economic mistake that happened to about half of us. That's going to bring us to the end of this episode. I hope you picked up on something, and if you have that misconception, send me an email, give me a call. I really don't care where you live. I work with people all over the country. Once we get the credit to where we can move forward with purchasing a house, I have my entire network of agents across the country that I can help refer you to find that perfect home or investment property. So if you're still with me, thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you picked up something out of it. Make sure you share this with anybody that maybe has that misconception about their credit reports. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.